Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
Today we're going to talk about the weather, and more specifically, we're going to talk about clouds and the water cycle, okay? If you look up, which most of us probably don't do enough these days, but if you look up into the sky, sometimes you'll see some really nice clouds there. But, some people probably don't know exactly what kinds of clouds there are and how those clouds got up there in the first place.
Now, when I was growing up in the state of Arizona, which is a desert area in the United States, clouds were special to us because almost every day, I'm not exaggerating, we had clear blue skies, no clouds, none. Hardly ever rained except in August, and then we got so excited about the rain. But here in Taiwan, we have lots of interesting cloud formations. I still look up in the sky. I love clouds. It makes me feel like, it's part of heaven up there. So we're going to talk about how clouds are part of the water cycle and what their function is. So we're going to do that for the next 2 days. It's going to be kind of fun to learn more about clouds, at least in English. I'm sure our listeners know a lot about clouds in Chinese.
I'm sure you do, but today again, as Stephanie said, we're going to find out how to talk about clouds in English. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's read the entire contents of our lesson now one time.
Little is more satisfying in life than looking up and seeing a blue sky dotted with puffy clouds. These fluffy white shapes tell us a lot about both current conditions and any weather events on the horizon. They're also an essential part of the water cycle. Evaporation. Liquid water evaporates when a heat source, such as the sun, gives it energy. Water from oceans, rivers, and other sources drifts into the atmosphere as vapor. The air can hold more or less water vapor in it, depending on temperature and atmospheric pressure. The higher the pressure or temperature, the more water vapor it can hold. Condensation. Air becomes saturated when it reaches its maximum level of water vapor. If saturated air experiences a drop in temperature or pressure, the excess vapor undergoes condensation and returns to a liquid or solid form. The water or ice clings onto particles in the air, like dust, salt crystals, or bacteria. And when many such particles group together, they form into clouds. Precipitation. Clouds grow big and heavy as they collect more water, and eventually their particles turn to rain, snow, or other forms of precipitation. The particles rain down onto the ground and collect in bodies of water like lakes and oceans. The liquid water supports all kinds of life on Earth.
Okay, we are talking about clouds and the water cycle in our atmosphere. Okay, a cycle is like a system of events one after another, and they repeat each other, they repeat the cycle in the same order. You could say like the life cycle of a butterfly, for example. You've got the caterpillar, and the caterpillar becomes a cocoon, and then the butterfly comes out of the cocoon, and then it lays the eggs, and then a caterpillar comes out from the eggs and the cycle repeats. That's the life cycle of a butterfly. But here we're talking about the water cycle, and it repeats itself over and over.
So let's dig in, guys. Here's the first sentence. Little is more satisfying in life than looking up and seeing a blue sky dotted with puffy clouds. Now, little is more satisfying. So there's not much out there that is better or makes you feel more pleasure than looking up and seeing that blue sky that has a few puffy clouds. So if it's kind of a confusing phrase, isn't it? Little is more satisfying. So it just means it's hard to beat this feeling of looking up into a blue sky and seeing those puffy clouds. Puffy is kind of, swollen looking. Sometimes if you eat too much salt or as you get older, you'll wake up and your eyes will be puffy. And it's because you've got too much liquid that's being held in your face. And so your eyes look a little puffy. Or what else is puffy? I think if someone hits you, yeah, if someone hits you, usually on your face especially, your face will puff up a little bit as your face is healing itself from that bruise probably you have on your face.
Or, of course, some of those coats that people wear during this time of year, they're kind of puffy because they've got the down feathers inside of them, and they kind of puff up and keep you warm in the winter. So those are kind of puffy coats. But we're talking about puffy clouds, which you don't really see a lot of during the winter, especially here in Taipei when it's cloudy so much. But maybe down in the center and south, you see more of those puffy clouds. And these fluffy white shapes tell us a lot about both current conditions and the weather events on the horizon. On the horizon here just means what is coming from far away. Of course, the horizon is that line that you see where the earth meets the sky. It's usually very far away, the horizon. But if something is on the horizon, it means it's still quite far away, but it's going to happen soon. Now, also in this sentence, we have the word fluffy, which is similar to the word puffy. I would describe my pillow as being fluffy, or your pet cat might be fluffy as well, but I would not describe a cat as being puffy.
No.
I would say fluffy.
Yeah, fluffy to me is different too. It's kind of a feel to it, that soft, furry feel, fluffy. Or if you're cooking, if you're a baker, guys, if you cook and stir things up a lot, baking only, not just cooking, but baking, maybe you're stirring together sugar and eggs for a long time, it actually becomes very light. There's a lot of air in it, and we'd say it's fluffy.
Okay, so indeed we're describing clouds as being puffy and fluffy. And again, if you know how to look at the clouds, you can probably predict what kind of weather is coming or what kind of weather events are on the horizon. Is a typhoon coming? Is it going to be nice weather, etc., etc.? And they're also an essential part of the water cycle, which we're going to talk about next year. Essential just means important. It's a foundational part of the water cycle. You can't have the water cycle without clouds. They're very important.
So essential is one of our vocab words, guys. Essential means absolutely necessary, very, very important. Something that's essential for living would be air and water. You can actually go quite a long time without food, but your body can't go. I think you can't go more than 3 or 4 days without water. So water is essential, so is air to breathe. But we're seeing here that these clouds are also an important or essential part of the water cycle. A similar word to essential would be vital. V-I-T-A-L. That's also a word that you can use here. So let's talk about the water cycle right now. What's the first step?
Okay, the first step in the water cycle is evaporation. Okay, that's the noun form. It talks about when liquid turns into a gas because of heat, and the verb there is to evaporate. Okay, so here it says liquid water evaporates when a heat source, such as the sun, gives it energy. So after a rainy day in the summer, of course, you've got puddles on the street there, little bodies of water on the street, but it gets hot really fast, and then pretty soon those puddles disappear. Hey, where did all that water go that was on the street? Well, it evaporated. Heat from the sun heated up that water, and it evaporated. It turned into a vapor or a gas.
Now, water from oceans, rivers, and other sources drifts into the atmosphere as vapor. So you look out onto those oceans and rivers and streams, or even smaller than rivers, or creeks, C-R-E-E-K-S. That's a tiny little stream. My grandpa and grandma had a creek next to their property, which we always would go and play in the summer. Well, these are sources of water, as you know. But even from these bigger sources, they're going to have a lot of evaporation take place. So once the sun comes out and it heats up that air, then that water just is drawn out into the air. And as Tom said, it turns into some sort of gas. Vapor is another word for gas here. And you can't see it, but it's happening. And the air can hold more or less water vapor in it. And it depends on two things, temperature and the pressure in the atmosphere. Now, if you're really into weather, you probably noticed that when the weather man or the weather lady is on TV talking about the weather, in English, they'll actually talk about the atmospheric pressure. So if you don't know what that is, you probably won't understand the whole weather forecast. But yeah, they'll always talk about that. So the air doesn't just hold the same amount of water every day. No, it depends on how hot or cold it is and the pressure that is there in the air.
Indeed. So these are different variables, temperature and atmospheric pressure. And if you see weather maps, of course, you have areas of low pressure and areas of high pressure. So I guess the higher the temperature and the higher the atmospheric pressure, the more vapor that the air can hold. And if the temperature is lower and if the pressure is lower, then the air holds less water vapor. So again, these are all variables. And again, the air can hold more or less water vapor depending on temperature and pressure. And of course, as it says here at the end of the paragraph here, the higher the pressure or temperature, the more water vapor it can hold. Okay, so that pretty much explains that particular facet of the water cycle. And we'll continue talking about this in just a second. But right now, we're going to take a break and listen to our Chinese teacher.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。不晓得最近放假大家有没有去户外踏踏青看看云呢？如果没有的话没关系，今明2天我们要带大家来看云哦。不过要看云之前我们要知道一件事情，就是云跟水循环 water cycle 其实是密不可分的。所以今天的课程当中，我们会针对水循环的3步骤跟云之间的关系做一个很精密的解说。好，我们先来看一下第一段哦。第一段第一句就告诉我们，其实在生活当中大概没有什么事情比抬头看到点缀着一朵朵蓬松白云的蓝天更令人感到满足很放松了。不过在这句话当中，因为后面有一个简化的关系子句，我们要特别注意哦。最后面我们从那个 dotted D-O-T-T-E-D 这个字的左边左括号，那么右边句尾的地方右括号，先行词是 a blue sky 蓝天，那么它是一个关系子句的简化，也就是说 dotted 前面省略的是冠带 that 跟 be 动词 is。好，所以其实这些松软的白云就告诉我们很多有关于天气的情况或者是可能未来发生的这一种天候的事件。所以白云的形状真的很重要，因为可以观察即将变化的一个天候事件。我们看到一个 on the horizon 就是所谓的地平线或者是海平面的意思。所以 something on the horizon， 你在眼前看到远远的东西，待会就要靠近咯，也就是即将来临的。好，接下来我们就要针对 water recycle 所谓的水循环要来做一个介绍咯。第一个步骤是水循环嘛，如果一开始存在的状态是水，那么它其实会蒸发，所以第一个阶段叫做 evaporation 蒸发的阶段。那为什么会有蒸发这个情况呢？我们在蒸发这一段的第一句当中看到的是，因为如果有热源 heat source， 那么所谓的水 liquid water， liquid 就是液态的意思，它就会 evaporates 就会蒸发。那热源是什么呢？比如说像太阳啦，或者是其他的热，那么水 liquid water 就会蒸发变成气体的状态。那水呢，当然就是地球上的可能是 oceans 海洋啦 rivers 或者是河川或其他源头的水分，都会用水蒸气的方式飘到大气层当中。在这里第二句当中有一个 as 在这里是介系词，后面加的是身份，也就是水蒸气这种身份，所以会飘进 atmosphere 大气层。不过第三句话我们看一下 The air can hold 在这里就是撑住容纳 空气可以容纳或多或少的一些水蒸气，请把3个字画起来，叫做 more or less。字面上就是多或少，也就是或多或少的水蒸气，但是要看本身的 temperature 温度或者是大气压力 atmospheric pressure。所以这个条件的前面有一个片语叫做 depending on something， 依赖、依靠或根据的是什么什么东西。而这句话最后面有一个 the more 的比较级，表示2个人事物或者是2种情况会依据反比或者是正比的情况有关系。比如说我们看到的是 the higher the pressure or temperature， 压力或者是温度越高 the higher the 加比较级，接下来的结果是 the more water vapor it can hold， 就可以包含越多的水。我们常听到的是人越多越好啊， the more the merrier， 或者是你读的越多英文就会越好， the more you read the better your English will be。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. We're actually talking very practically about how weather works and the water cycle works and how clouds are involved in the water cycle. Today, we're focusing on that water cycle, as you know. We just finished talking about evaporation. That's when liquid water comes into contact with a heat source like the sun, and it just changes from liquid into a vapor or gas and is taken up into the air. Now, how much the air can hold, or the clouds can hold actually, depends on the temperature and also the atmospheric pressure, the pressure that's in the air. Now, we're moving on to the next stage in the water cycle. That is condensation. And condensation, it says here, the air becomes saturated when it reaches its maximum level of water vapor. Now, when you are saturated, it just means something is holding a liquid or some sort of moisture as much as possible. For example, maybe your sponge is saturated, or you are trying to do a chemical experiment and you want to saturate something in a liquid. Again, that liquid is absorbed, it's soaked into that thing, and if it's saturated, it holds as much liquid as it possibly can.
And it can't hold any more. So indeed, the air becomes saturated when we have a maximum level of water vapor. So you just can't get any more water vapor into the air, and then it's saturated. So if saturated air experiences a drop in temperature or pressure, the excess vapor undergoes condensation and returns to a liquid or solid form. So basically, again, you've got water in a gaseous state. It's vapor. And of course, the air cannot hold any more of that water vapor. If the temperature goes down and the pressure goes down, then, of course, we've got this excess vapor coming out of the air. It undergoes condensation. So condensation basically is the opposite of evaporation. It turns from a gas into a liquid.
Sure does. Excess here just means an amount of something that's more than you want or more than is necessary. So, yeah, sometimes if you don't move around a lot during the day, but you eat a lot the same day, you have excess calories that are going to stay with you that you didn't burn off. So, excess vapor. Yeah, excess, again, is too much of something. More than you want, more than you need. So, I have an excess of clothes in my apartment right now that I'm trying to get rid of. So this excess vapor just means it goes through some sort of process and it returns to a liquid or solid form. As Tom was saying, it's the opposite of evaporation, right? The water or ice will cling onto particles in the air. Some of those particles could be dust, salt crystals, or even bacteria. There's a lot of bacteria in the air. And when many such particles group together, that's when they form into clouds. So what does cling mean, Tom?
It means to stick onto something. Cling here is often used with the preposition on or to or onto, to cling to or to cling onto something. So again, the water or ice will cling onto particles in the air, such as dust, or there might even be salt crystals floating in the air, or there might even be bacteria up there. And when many such particles group together, they form into clouds. Okay, so there you go. That's where clouds come from. It comes from the condensation of the water vapor in the air. Okay, and I remember hearing this when I was quite young, that yes, raindrops always have like a little speck of dust inside of them, or maybe a little bit of salt or bacteria or something. The water needs something to cling onto before it can become a water drop.
Yeah, now a crystal, you've probably seen crystals a lot around here. Crystals, you can see them in salt, you can see them in snowflakes, you can see them in beautiful rocks like a quartz rock. It's a solid substance and it has this geometric shape or pattern that keeps repeating and repeating and repeating. Some people believe crystals will bring you some sort of force that makes you more relaxed and calm. I know a lot of Buddhists believe in crystals, that they have power to affect your life, to make you, I don't know, more successful, more calm, all those things.
You make more money, of course. That's the most important thing.
Okay.
But now that you mentioned crystals, a lot of people here have these amethyst crystals that they keep in their homes. It's kind of purple, and they're crystals and stuff like that.
Beautiful.
So yeah, those are salt crystals there. And again, these are different things in the air that the water will cling to, and then the clouds form. Okay?
Oh, Tom, I wanted to mention with cling, we'll often use it to talk about kids. If a young toddler is out with his mom and a stranger wants to, hold that toddler usually will cling to its mom. Cling to his or her mom because they're afraid of strangers. Cling, just hold very tightly to somebody.
And if you've ever dried your clothes in a dryer, sometimes the clothes will cling to each other because of static electricity. So you might want to put something in there to stop the clothes from clinging to each other. But people here in Taiwan tend to dry their clothes by hanging them out to dry, which is smart. It saves energy, and they sit in the sun. It's much better than using a dryer. But in any case, again, this is the formation of clouds because the water vapor will cling to particles in the air. So now let's move on and talk about precipitation, which basically refers to when water falls out of the sky in the form of rain or snow. That's what precipitation is. Sometimes the weather forecasters will say, oh, we're expecting some precipitation today. In other words, it's going to rain.
Or it could be snow. Precipitation really doesn't tell us whether it's rain, sleet, or snow. Sleet is that sleet hurts if you get into a sleet storm or there's hail coming down, which is like frozen ice cubes hitting you. We would have hailstorms in Arizona, which was weird. It usually happens very quickly. But there's rain, snow, and like I said, either sleet, which is a liquid ice, or hail, which is like a solid ice that can hit you. The particles rain down onto the ground and collect in bodies of water like lakes and oceans. So it is a cycle. Do you see how it starts in those oceans and lakes? It's pulled up, and then it forms into some sort of precipitation, and then it comes back down when things get too heavy in those clouds.
Indeed. And of course, we all know what that is here in Taiwan because of the rain.
Yeah.
But where I'm from, of course, we get both rain and snow. But the common denominator here is that the precipitation will collect in bodies of water like lakes or rivers or oceans. And then the liquid water supports all kinds of life on Earth. And we should also mention that the water cycle begins again. So we've got the lakes and we've got the oceans, and then heat comes and causes the water to evaporate, and the cycle repeats all over again. There you have it. But next time, of course, we'll talk more specifically about clouds themselves. Right now, though, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher.
接下来呢，就是 water cycle 的第二个阶段，叫做 condensation 凝结。凝结什么呢？其实指的就是这一些水蒸气凝结成云的意思。为什么会产生这种情况？我们来看一下，第一句讲的就很清楚，因为空气它会变得饱和，如果空气里面的水蒸气达到一个 maximum level， 就是最高的条件、最高的一个限度的时候，也就是说，饱和的空气如果遇到温度或者是压力的下降，我们接下来看第二句哦。第二句的动词是 experience， 体验、体会或者是经历什么什么事件。后面的 a drop in something 指的是什么什么东西的降落。所以如果是压力或温度的下降，那么多余的水蒸气就会产生凝结，聚集在一起，就回到了一个 liquid 液态啦，或者是 solid 固态的情况。所以水或者是冰呢，就会附着在空气上面，比如说像是灰尘啊、盐结晶、细菌这种 particle， 这种微粒或者是所谓的分子上面。那么附着这边的动作叫做 cling onto something。cling onto something， 那么接着很多的微粒全部 group together， 都聚拢在一起的时候呢，就会形成云这个东西。那么云如果多了之后变得很重，就会降水啦。所以水循环的第三个阶段就是 precipitation， 所谓的降水。那么在最后一段当中的第一句，我们先把中间的 s 抓出来。英文当中如果看到 s 后面加主词动词，就表示它是一个连接词的形态。那意思就可能有三个哦。第一个 because， 第二个 when， 第三如同好像。那要怎么判断呢？只能根据上下文来判断。所以最后面这里，我们前面讲的是随着更多的水，云就变得越来越大，越大越重。所以这里的 s 要当时间的 when 是比较通顺的。When they collect more water， 当聚集更多水的时候，云就变得很重。当然就会 turn to rain, snow or other forms of precipitation， 就会变成其他形式的降水。而这些降水呢，这些液态水则是维持地球各种生命很重要的东西。我是安娜，以上是今天的课程，我们下次见喽。
That's all for our lesson today, everybody, but please join us again next time when we actually talk about clouds. Oh, they're so fluffy, they're so puffy. I can't wait to talk about them in our next program. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.